Warp Core Breach, Episode 33, Name Game.
Captain, enemy ships decloaking off our port bow.
They're charging weapons.
Shields up, red alert.
They're firing!
Containment failure detected. Warp core breach imminent.
Welcome to Warp Core Breach, Episode 33. On this episode, Nick and David create a motion picture scenario and recap Wrath of Khan. The Faction Report revisits some overlooked Klingon cards. Would Be Nice's builds the Fortune. Griffin hijacks the Prometheus. And finally, we all go on a competitive streak as we discuss whether or not prize ships are beneficial for the game.
Warning. Warp core breach detected.
I'm David Montgomery, and here's my co-host, the Genesis device, to my heroic sacrifice. How do you feel?
Young. I feel young. And that's what Star Trek Attack Wing is for me. Like it's fun. I feel vital and young and fun, and you know, when you get to my age, every chance you get, you take it. You hold on to it with your arthritic fingers and you don't let go.
So, you know, talking about fun, it is important to go out and have fun every once in a while. As the people at Gateplay will attest, I played Wrath of Khan purely to have fun. That was my sole intent, was to go out there, to mess around, and to have fun.
Right on.
Now you're going, okay, David, look, you've got a 3-month OP series. Why would you throw one away? Because, frankly, I don't care. I'm going to get the prize ships anyways. It's all good. Prize pack, grand prize ship. It's all good. So what do I take? Well, this is fun. I know I had said last week I was taking Weapon Zero. That part was set. And it was. Until Friday night at about 10 p.m.
Uh-huh.
Then I had an epiphany.
Eureka!
Yes. I didn't quite say Eureka. I said, Because try as I might, I couldn't quite get my Weapon Zero build to come together. It was missing something. What was it missing? It was missing the Regent's flagship. Why was it missing? Because Craig was already running that.
Right.
And I only have one, so I'm okay with that. Now he ended up winning the tournament, so no harm, no foul. So I said, okay, what else do I have to go on? Well, one of our listeners actually had responded to the build challenge, or the resource challenge that we gave, and it said, hey, try out high-yield photon torpedoes. And I had written back and I said, yeah, that's not happening. So I ran high-yield photon torpedoes. Because why not? Main power grid was the other one I was really considering, and I really want to try that one out, and I'm going to figure out a way to make it work.
Okay.
But I ran high-yield photons with 5 ships. I should say at this point, my venue is running 120 constructed with a booster. So 160. So I end up having 6 ships on the map. And that right there is a little bit intimidating. Before the booster, my highest pointed ship was 28 points.
Uh-huh.
And it should have only been 26 because the Zindus should have been the generic. But then I would have had points on something else. Anyways, I had the Enterprise NX, I had a Tholian with photons, I had
nice.
Praetus, the Jazz Call. Did I need the Praetus and the Jazz Call? Absolutely not. Could have been generic Romulan Bird of Praise. Just said, same
fun.
points, don't care. And then the Zindus was the MVP there, not because of the Zindus, but because it was just kind of a nice ship to fly.
Yeah.
But between Denatra, Clark Terrell, Admiral Matt Decker, everything having photon torpedoes, high-yield photons, rolling 6 or 7 attack dice with a reroll of a blank and everything having a battle station to crit conversion is actually really nice.
Cool.
The first 3 photons I rolled 6 or 7 hits.
Huh.
Either before or after the reroll and conversions.
Right.
Now, what does all of this do when the highest hull value I have is 3 and is 4 with the Zendis, but everything else is 3 or 2? Well, you get splashback damage and everything kind of dies. There's a little loophole in the rule, and maybe I'm exploiting things, but you know what? When you're doing this, it's just kind of fun.
Okay.
You're the attacking ship. When you shoot, you're still the attacking ship when splashback damage comes to you from the photon torpedoes.
Uh-huh.
The Mutara Nebula gives a mission token to the attacking ship whenever any ship is destroyed. So, yes, my opponent was getting 18, 20, 23 points for my ship being destroyed, but I was getting a 5-point bonus. Consolation.
Right. Yeah.
And you know what? The way I saw it was, I'm running such low captain skill, they're either going to blow me up first, or I'm going to be a little wounded, that I don't care what happens here. And you know what? Most of the time that was right. What hurt me in one of my matches was that I bumped into my own stuff.
Oh.
And I did, both times I bumped, one ship took 2 damage and the other ship took 1.
Yeah.
So I kind of gave away 6 damage.
Whoops.
And when your total durability is 20, giving away 6 of that hurts a lot. More than a quarter of your fleet. However, I will say, I had a blast flying in formation. I had a blast being able to sensor echo on ships that aren't cloaked, and now I really, really, really want sensor echoing to be a bigger thing in this game. I want that on small ships. I feel like they should be able to do it without having to cloak.
I would love a follow-up upgrade card, at least for the Prototype 01, where it can perform sensor echoes.
Yeah.
It's like a cheap upgrade, like 2 points or something. You may perform sensor echoes with a 1 or a 2 without being cloaked. That's it.
I could buy it.
Yeah.
Like, look at how the ship moved in the episode. It literally rolled in space.
Right, I remember that. And maybe even for the Defiant, not because it necessarily did a barrel roll, but because of how maneuverable it was, it would make sense.
It did weave back and forth quite a bit. It had some smooth weaving. It wasn't wobbling, but it would just like whoosh, whoosh, side to side and twist like on its center axis with side drifting and stuff like that. So that puppy could maneuver. It had good engines, thrusters, you name it. It could move. So even if it just got a 1 sensor echo, give the Prototype a 2, give the Defiant a 1. Yeah. Or heck, give the Prototype a 3 to be perfectly honest, and give the Defiant a 2.
Yeah, I think that would be a great help. But yeah, I played 2 matches. I had a buy-in there, and I had a blast playing. I went in the first match. I was up against like a Dominion battleship, battlecruiser, Jem'Hadar ship with the bioship blind.
Yeah.
And I'm going, I don't really have a chance here. I came close. That game score was 140 to 100.
Ooh, nice job.
And I had a final shot where I rolled almost as well as I could. I got 6 of 7 hits on my photons. And he rolled 1 evade with 1 evade token. And he had 5 hull. So if either of the crits was a direct hit, he blows up and I win. But it wasn't.
Aw, that's where you would have liked Joaquin. double the
Yeah,
chances.
it doesn't matter. The next
Yeah.
two weren't direct hits either. But I will say, this was the first OP that I've seen consistently actually cycling through the damage deck.
Yeah, that was a fun aspect. And I'll get to this in a little bit. Don't want to hijack your story, but yeah, I did a play test of the Rathacon OP on Saturday night, so that was fun.
But I had so much fun. And look, I always say it's tough to find the fun when you're losing. But I kind of resigned myself to the fate. And in my last match, when I walked over and I looked at my opponent's build, I just kind of walked back. And I'm like, okay, I know what I'm in for.
Well, there's a line that comes to mind from Toy Story that I find very appropriate. It's called falling with style.
I am with you. It's just, this was a scenario where you kind of wanted to intentionally bump sometimes and do some other things. But when I was up against skill 10 and skill 11 captains, it's just like,
oh, I know, I hear you.
What's the point? When my best captain's skill 6, it's like, I don't have a chance to bump and evade.
What was your blind again?
The Kazon.
Right.
Which is okay, but like I know what was left. So I was the last one to draw, and there were 6 left. We were finishing up boosters from the last brick and pulling from a new one. And there were 2 Bajoran left, a Lakota, a Klingon, and a Mirror. And I would have honestly preferred any of the other boosters to the Kazon. Not because I hate the Kazon. It just didn't fit with what I was doing this time around.
Heck, you would have been thrilled to get an interceptor at that point, it sounds like.
Yes, because it was a suicide ship.
Yeah.
It would have fit the theme of my build so much better.
Yeah.
But the best part of all of this is that I got to fly my Shapeways NX refit.
Oh, nice. I have to mount mine still.
And everybody was looking at that going, oh, that is pretty. Where did you get that, and how do I get one of those?
Adding to my bit about the playtest of Rathacon, even with the proliferance of people going, oh yeah, Xindi Weapon 0, there's still some interesting prospects coming up. And when I did some playtesting, Aaron joined me on Saturday night, and he played the Xindi Weapon 0. We did a roll-off for which blind we would be playing with, because I have them all already. And he rolled the only one that he had already pulled from a previous tournament. He rolled the Baroque. So he was able to pull right from his own ships. And unfortunately, the majority of the upgrades in that pack didn't really mesh well with the Rathacon Mutara Nebula scenario.
Yeah, that's a shield thing.
Yeah, but fortunately had the whole discard upgrades factor, but it didn't really play out. I ended up getting the Aldara, which actually was a halfway decent option. It wasn't overly powerful, but it has the 180 and it has good speed. It can go up to 5. And I used that to my advantage. In the very beginning, my other ships, I was playing the Tiny Prize and the Reliant, because I figured play thematic, with Kirk and Khan and all that jazz. And I threw the Eldara forward, whipped it ahead right at the border of the Nebula, forcing his Baroque to bump me. So not only was there some damage there, I avoided, I think he either took 1 damage or avoided altogether, but he lost his actions, and I was able to shoot him with all 3 of my ships in that second round, I believe it would have been. So I took out his Baroque right away.
Huh. Combat on the second round, what a novel concept.
Oh yeah, and 3 ships, like I had the Type 8s and upgrade and stuff like that on the other 2, so I was throwing 5 dice, 6 at range 1. I was able to just pummel it into dust. And he hadn't cloaked because he was sort of thinking, oh yeah, I'll get into the Nebula and it won't matter. So unfortunately he wasn't able to get the defense dice that he needed, rolling only 1. Once we got into the Nebula and I was trying to chase down his Weapon 0, it was definitely quite the chase, because it was hard to stay within range 1 But because I had 3 ships, I was able to sort of corral him into a position where I could get at him. So eventually I was able to claim victory, but not before I lost a ship. So came down to having 2 ships. The Reliant did die. It went down in a blazing ball of flaming glory.
As it's apt to do.
As well it should have been. Con, you're going down.
Yeah, because what most people did around my part is everybody set up directly facing the nebula. So sideways.
Yeah.
And they made a straight beeline into the nebula, doing like a 3 or 4 straight.
Mm-hmm.
And you get in there, and then you got to turn to face your opponent. And so I had a round where combat didn't start until like the halfway point.
Yeah, because you just got to get to each other.
Yeah, I was like, okay, are we gonna fight, or are we just gonna to fly around in here? Because I'm perfectly fine flying around and doing a dice roll.
Yeah. It's like Ring Around the Rosie or something. Yeah, that's one thing I find a lot of players that don't play a large variety of other players from different areas. They don't always come up with some of these just slightly outside of the box concepts, like, oh, you're not going to do a joust, you're actually going to rotate your ships from starting position instead of just pointing them straight ahead. A lot of people just take it for granted that you're going to face straight ahead. Yeah. It's interesting.
Oh, I mean, one of the best things you can ever do is set your ship up on like a 22.5-degree angle.
Yeah. Sometimes I set 1 or 2 at a 45, another one at a 22.5. Or even a 12.5 or 12.25 or whatever, approximate. Put each ship at different angles.
Because then as you're doing the bank, you start covering yourself as you weave.
Yeah, and if you've got white turns, that's even better. Especially if you got a 180-degree arc.
Yeah, those are rare, though.
Yeah, but that worked well for me because both the Enterprise and the Reliant have 180-degree forwards, and I pulled the Eldara, which also had a 180-degree forward. So... other than the fact that I had to chase him down just to get into range 1, once I was there, I was pretty much guaranteed to get arc almost every time.
Yeah.
The only occasional time is when I got stuck on the side or behind him with some angle, right?
Right.
Yeah. But one of the fun parts was using Gorn Raiding Party to disable all his upgrades. That was fun. So I brought Follower of Khan and Gorn Raiding Party and had a little bit of fun with some ganking going on. It's like, it's the perfect opportunity. You know they're not going to have shields. So make use of some of these cool cards you don't normally get to play with. And that's kind of what was sort of fun for me. Using cards I didn't get to use in the past.
Oh yeah, things like Takar showed up.
Yeah.
When's the last time you heard anyone say Takar was viable or sabotage? I'm like, oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
It's all those things that had the caveat of if you have no active shields and your opponent has no active shields, great, do it. Because now you can, and that's called building to the scenario.
Yeah, like, well, on the surface, Takar might not seem as nice as, say, Gorn Raiding Party because it only disables crew. It disables the captain as well.
Yeah.
And that's not just handy for movement and attack order. Bumping. You knock him down to Captain Skill 1, he's only rolling 1 defense.
Right, meaning you're guaranteed to do 1 damage to him.
Yes,
quite
minimum.
Possibly 2.
Exactly. And where ships pretty much max out at around 4 or 5 hull, unless you're going for like the scimitars and the weapon zeros and Borg and stuff like that. Unless you're going for the big daddies, you're going to be taking a significant percentage out of their hull with just 1 bump.
Yeah.
Even 1 damage that is not from combat is nasty.
Yeah, which is how I lost a Tholian ship. I'm like, ha.
Yeah.
you don't get a mission token. You didn't kill me while you were attacking.
And speaking of Tholians and cards and ships that we don't normally use, Like I've said before a few times that I loved Peak Performance because it gave me the opportunity to fly Tholians where they weren't really viable any other time. And the Mutara Nebula scenario, Wrath of Khan OP, it's another great scenario by WizKids that actually allows us to be different. It doesn't just come down to a straight joust. Yeah, you can choose to ignore it and just go to town on the side strip like you did in Resistance is Futile, but it's actually more interesting and you're more motivated to go into the nebula and play with it. And that's the kind of scenarios that I want to see more of from WizKids. You know, we kind of had a lackluster early start, but we've been getting more and more interesting scenarios, and I'm hoping this is more a hint of what's to come.
I would hope so.
Yeah. It definitely feels like there's more planning going on when it comes to these, and I appreciate that.
You know, anytime you have scenarios that are, one, thematic, and two, make you change the way you build, it's a good scenario. Because no one in my venue was building the same way that they normally do for Wrath of Khan. And that speaks to a scenario that accomplished its goal.
Absolutely.
Now, maybe that had to do with some additional alterations and me further defining the scenario and restricting things. But I still think that that was mostly the scenario saying, hey, look, your shields are down.
Mm-hmm.
There's A, avenues to exploit the other players, and B, you're vulnerable. So figure out how to not be vulnerable.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's like, regardless of any modifications you and I or any other of the TOs do for their OPs, you're flying in a part of space that you cannot have shields. So, right away, the first thing you're going to think of is, do I want to spend points on a ship with lots of shields if I'm not going to be able to use them?
Yeah, probably not.
You're not going to be flying the ships that have large quantity of shields. Like, you're not as likely to see something like an Enterprise E in there, because you're spending 10 points on shields you're not going to use, you know? So, it really makes you rethink your strategy for building, which is what you were saying, right out of the gate. And that alone is value. That alone is quality.
Which is awesome.
Absolutely. We need more of that. Because if we can shake up the builds more often, we're going to have less complaints, less concerns, more variety, and we're actually going to be able to see more of the cards that we've been investing in all these years come to use. Like, all they got to do is like think of a scenario that sets up a situation that says, okay, you can't rely on this, but this particular ability or play style now actually is viable. You can use this, it'll work, and will be fun. Because you can do it. And that's what they did with the nobody has shields situation. You took away the cloak, you took away the shields, you opened up the ganking.
And you can do so many other things. I mean, they already kind of did a thing to make torpedoes more valuable, or secondary weapons in general. And that says that, hey, we're not going to rewrite the entire game rules. What we're going to do is put scenarios in play that encourage you to utilize these things. They don't force you to do it.
Uh-huh.
But they nudge you in the right direction.
Yes.
And I would much rather have a game that encourages me or rewards me for doing different things on a month-by-month basis, rather than one that changes the totality of the rules all the time just because a few people want it to go one way or the other.
Right.
I'm trying to say that in a way that doesn't call anybody out or sound bad, because I'm not trying to do that.
Well, then let's put it this way. We rather than punish a very specific build, it's like they're not out to say, okay, double sphere, Picard, Ducat, we're going to rule it so you can't do that. It's like, that would just be silly. It's like you shouldn't rule or tweak a game globally just to penalize one particular aspect of it. So, like you're saying, this just takes a completely opposite side approach and just simply rewards the other side of it, the creative, the different. Like,
yeah.
It's better to reward than to punish. And it actually puts those other power players on their ear a little bit, and it challenges them. So it's like, oh, well, I've had this one build that like wins me everything. It's like, oh, guess what? You actually have to think now, come up with another good build to fit a new situation. And that's where you really get to tell who's the good players or not. Because they're able to adapt. Like a certain non-Swedish faction that we're aware of.
Yeah. So, at this point, we are starting to run a little bit long, so rather than bore you all to tears, we are going to toss it over to our contributors and hear what wonderful things they have to say this week, and hopefully they will continue to challenge you all to think differently.
Good evening, and welcome to the Faction Report. The segment that brings you the inside scoop on all the factions. We'll show you how they really work, expose their weaknesses, find innovative combinations, and help you make them work better. And now here's your host, the man who is not Picard, David Walton.
Hi everyone, I'm not Picard. Klingons are a faction that I absolutely love. I don't think there is a more iconic race that has come out of Star Trek, a race that's shown more progression from early on being basically a Cold War substitute for the Soviet Union to being an honourable warrior race that they are. I say now, but there's not really any now in Star Trek terms. I'm looking forward to the new series next year, but we'll see how the Klingons are portrayed in that. But certainly, Klingons are a fantastic and a deep race, and for a long time, Klingons were just a race that was decided around and kind of based upon the idea of being a glass cannon in Star Trek Attack Wing. They would fly forward, they would give a huge number of attack dice on something, and that was it. But I think Klingons have a few cards that are well worth checking out, which maybe are not cards that you would typically associate with Klingon fleet, and certainly something I've had a look at again more recently. The first of those is Projected Stasis Field, and I've been singing the praises of Projected Stasis Field for a while. If you go and have a look on my blog, you can see I've spoken about it a number of times. That's notpicard.blogspot.com if you're interested. And David and Natasha have also spoken on this show about how they like Projected Stasis Field. I rate Projected Stasis Field, and I think you can do some really nice things with it. Perhaps a more conventional card that you can have a look at, and I think it's an underrated card, is Tactical Officer. Now, I don't mean Klingon Tactical Officer, which came with the Amar. I mean Tactical Officer, which came with the Tong expansion, because that particular card is, for a disable, it allows you to re-roll all of your blank dice. No, obviously your battle stations results can't be re-rolled. You can't re-roll crits or hits if you would want to. I don't know why. But the advantage of that card is only 2 points. It's a disable rather than discard or anything else. But it allows you to get dice quality, essentially get the ability to tactical lock without an action and without having to have any of the prerequisites that you would need to have a target lock. So the ship doesn't need to be in range 3 when you take your action. The ship doesn't need to be decloaked when you take your action. And I think that's a particularly nice ability to be able to use. In my own meta, monotanium armor plating is a frequently used thing, and I've been using Tactical Officer to some pretty good effect to make sure that I've got that dice quality. You can quite easily take Drex or Nagaran on a ship and Tactical Officer in the second crew slot, which you can get through a variety of different cards. If you take one of the named ships, they usually have 2 crew slots. So yeah, you take Tactical Officer in one slot, take Drex or Nagaran in the other slot. You've got your battle stations conversions, and one of your battle stations is converted to a crit. You've also got the ability to take rerolls on blank dice as well. With those two abilities combined, it's essentially like having a target lock in battle stations for that really good quality. I know a lot of people don't rate it and say, "Oh, I'll just take a target lock," but sometimes you can't take a target lock, and so I actually really rate that card, and that's something I would encourage people to have a look at. The other thing that I've been looking at more frequently with Klingons lately is the other Martoks. Now, Martok 8 is the most frequently used Martok because he allows you another ship in your fleet to take an additional action. But I've actually been using one of the Martok 7s, not the Admiral version, the other one, and more frequently Martok 9, if you can get your hands on him, because they offer a little bit of quality and also give you the ability to fire at an even higher captain skill. Martok 9 with Worf in one of your crew slots is a captain skill 12, which is unheard of, and I'm a big fan of high captain skill. I think it's really important to fire first. The other thing I quite like in Klingon fleets is having all of my captains at the same captain skill. If you've got captains at the same captain skill, you can choose the order they move in, which I think gives you that extra flexibility, particularly with Klingons who like flying in formation. So the crew version of Worf, who came with the Rotaran, is quite a good card for that because he allows you to boost one of your captain's captain skill up to the same sort of level as perhaps your Martok 9. Or, if you're like me and you really like high captain skill a lot, you could boost Martok 9 up to a 12. If you put Admiral Gorkon on the same ship, he could be 13. If you're still using the old fleet captain cards, potentially you could get him as high as 15, and then someone would turn up with Gen Khan and ruin your day. Anyway, some cards I would like you to consider for Klingons anyway are Tactical Officer, the crew version of Worf, Martok 9, and perhaps most of all, Projected Stasis Field. Thanks very much for listening. I'm not Picard.
Hello players, Would Be Nice is with some more love for the Independents, and I think we can have some fun with this one, because it was actually in 2 episodes of TNG, but just 1 appearance. Think you've got it? Lots to cover on this slippery ship, so let's go to the final season and build ourselves a mercenary raider. Baran's Raider is a 3-3-3-3, 24 points, ND unique, front 90 arc, evade, scan, target lock, sensor echo, 3 crew, 2 tech, and a weapon. If you discard your captain or any crew this round, you may immediately take a battle stations as a free action. This ship may use the sensor echo action when not cloaked. The generic drops a shield, crew, and tech, but keeps the text that says it may use the sensor echo when not cloaked. Captain Arctis Baran, 3 points, 5 skill, ND unique. Action, you may disable up to 2 crew to add +1 to your primary weapon this round for each crew disabled. Or, action, you may discard 1 crew to add +1 to your primary weapon and +2 to your captain's skill for this round. Crew time, and I'll say that for all of these crew. Faction penalties are doubled when assigned to a Federation ship, because they're all criminals. Galen, 4 points, ND unique. Add a crew slot to your ship. If your captain is discarded for any reason, Galen becomes your new captain at skill 4. You may immediately remove the disabled tokens from all of this ship's crew's upgrades. Action. Discard your captain. Each time you attack this round, you may reroll all of your blank results once. This upgrade cannot be in the same fleet as Jean-Luc Picard, because Galen was Jean-Luc Picard undercover. William T. Riker, another Riker. 2 points, ND unique. During the activation phase, you may disable this card to increase your captain's skill by +1, or during the modify attack die step, you may discard this card to convert 1 critical damage to a normal hit. This hit ignores the target ship's shields. Remember, he's a criminal. Double penalty on a Fed ship. Vekor, 2 points, ND unique. You may disable this card to perform a scan or evade as a free action. Or, disable this card and your captain to perform a scan or evade as a free action, even if your ship already has a corresponding token beside it. Narek, 3 points, ND unique. Action. Disable this card to immediately make an additional 1 maneuver on your dial. You may discard instead of disabling to also roll +1 defense each time you defend this round. Tolera, 5 points into unique. Disable to target a ship in range 1 with active shields and disable up to 2 crew upgrades, or discard to target a ship in range 1 with no active shields and discard up to 2 crew upgrades. You do not pay a faction penalty to assign to a Vulcan ship. Non-unique generic mercenary, 1 point. Disable this card to add +1 to your captain skill this round. No ship can be equipped with more than 2. Tech time, sensor dampening hull, 4 points into unique. Normal defensive range bonuses do not apply to this ship. Instead, roll 1 defense die when attacked at range 2, and roll 2 defense die when attacked at range 3. You also roll your full defense dice in the presence of an opponent's scan tokens. Your ship cannot be target locked at range 3. This upgrade costs +4 for any ship other than a mercenary ship. No servo implants, 4 points into unique. You may disable this card instead of disabling a crew upgrade. If you do this and your captain skill is 5 or less, add +1 to your captain skill this round. Or, action. Discard this card to perform the actions on 2 crew upgrades even if they are disabled. If a crew upgrade is already disabled, you must discard that upgrade. You may not perform or receive any free actions the round you take this action. And our weapon. Targeted strike. 3 points, 3 attack, range 1 to 2. Indy. Non-unique. Attack. Spend your target lock and discard this card. Before the modify attack dice step, if all of the attack dice are a combination of hit or critical results, roll 1 additional attack die. After the modify defense dice step, 1 uncancelled hit result ignores the target ship's shields, if any. So, lots of upgrades for the Indy faction to play with here. Lots of trickery to bump up your captain skill, sacrifice your captain, and get free battle stations while doing it, all while screwing over your crew. Try them out, and keep thinking outside that box.
Hi, I'm Dave Griffin. Today we're going to be talking about the mission Hijacked, which came with the USS Prometheus and replicates Voyager's message in a bottle. I recently came across this mission when somebody mentioned it on Facebook, and since Prometheus is just about my favorite ship, I thought it was worth having a look at. On the Romulan side, we have 120 SP, including 1 Prometheus class with Rekar, R-E-K-A-R, as captain, and at least 40 points in the Prometheus. And you can't use the Doctor or the EMH Mark II on the ship. It starts on the north edge. All the Romulans start on the north edge. On the Federation side, we have 90 SP with no Prometheus class ships, and the Doctor and the EMH Mark II cannot be deployed on any ship. And put 4 mission tokens besides the play area. The Federation start on the south edge. Now, the special rules are very important here. Basically, the Romulans start off having hijacked the Prometheus, and they have 4 turns to use it. So, at the end phase, you remove 1 mission token from the side of the board, and on the turn after the end phase in which you remove the last token, the play of the ship reverts to the Federation. When that happens, you remove all Romulan upgrades, captains, admirals, and any other kind of upgrade, and deploy the EMH Mark II and captain the Doctor, not the regular crew Doctor card. So, on the Romulan side, the objective is to destroy all the Federation ships. And on the Federation side, it's to destroy all Romulan ships, and whoever side the Prometheus is on at the moment has to be destroyed in order for the other side to win. Now, I will say from the start that this is a tough mission for the Romulans. I had one person say they thought it was tough for the Federation, but I think it's tougher for the Romulans because they really have to try to concentrate and destroy at least 1 Federation ship, hopefully without losing one, before the end of turn 4. I might go so far as to say that maybe the Romulans should get at least another extra 10 SP. You can try it yourself and let me know what you think. As far as tactics go, there are several things that are useful to the Federation. There's nothing different about this except that you would normally want to use something like the Prometheus and you can't. But what you can use is the Sovereign class. You can use the Akira class, the USS Thunderchild. You can even use the Lakota with both phaser upgrades, giving you a 5-weapon ship with a 180 arc and a rear arc. Of course, you could also use a Sovereign with a dorsal phaser array and probably be better off, but there you go. On the Romulan side, don't be afraid to use any ship in the toolbox given your points. Scimitar, Valdor, Avatar of Tomed, if you have it. Advanced cloaking is a good idea to avoid the Federation target locking on you. If you plan to stay cloaked, interface generator is a good idea. For the Feds, you would like to avoid combat on the first 2 turns if possible. Maybe you do a slow roll forward, or maybe you even start off moving right or left and then turn toward the enemy. That would probably get you in combat maybe on turn 2 if your enemy is lucky, and if your enemy is not so lucky on turn 3. And since they only have 4 turns to work, the more turns you can not allow them to use the Prometheus, the better. You might want to avoid resources on both sides, or if one side uses them, let the other side use them too. My friend is fond of saying he thinks the Indy-Fed fleet captain tends to unbalance things on one side or the other. It is a very dangerous thing to put on one side and not the other. If one side uses it, you probably want to give it to the other side as well. On the Romulans, you want to close as quickly as possible because you only have 4 turns and you really do have to try to destroy one of the Federation ships. And since the Federation know that, they're probably going to have a defensive upgrade, stuff like Hood Riker and Tom Paris and Elizabeth Shelby and Captain DeSoto and systems upgrade and Unimatrix shielding, etc., etc., etc. It's certainly possible these days to make a ship that might as well be called to be cloaked, except that you can have your shields up at the same time. So the Federation's probably got a couple of ships out there with some good defenses, and you're going to need to try to break through those defenses. One thing that somebody on Facebook introduced the idea of is that on the Romulan side, you might want to run the Prometheus off the board on turn 4, or at least move it somewhere where it's going to be hard to turn around. That's a little bit sneaky on the Romulans' part, but I think it's probably a good idea, and given what I think is a slight mismatch in this mission, it's probably not a bad tactic. Try to arrange it so that on the 4th turn you do get a shot with it, but, try to arrange it on the 4th turn that you run it off the board and disregard that shot with it. Of course, if you think it will win you the game, you can keep it on the board and use it to take the shot. But you're probably better off not giving the ship to the Federation side. Well, despite its possible mismatch here, and it's not really that unbalanced, I think this is a fun mission to play, and I like seeing the Prometheus on the board, so I would rate this as 3 stars and say it's worth playing. Thanks.
And now it's time for the Warp Core Breach Question of the Week, where we pose your questions to all of the contributors in the hopes that someone will get it right. This episode's question of the week: are prize ships beneficial for the game? A bit controversial, as I'm sure, and really, you can take both sides here. And you're not wrong. This is probably more meant for us to get the discussion going rather than to solve anything, and I don't think we're going to change anyone's mind with what we say here.
Yeah, this one, I think it is the double-edged sword. It is neither one nor the other, it's both. It's both good and bad for various reasons. Like, the first positive thing that comes to mind is prize ships, whether they're packs or models or whatever, they're a draw. They draw people in and say, ooh, if I go play, I can get something cool. Something I can use.
Right. Now, as we know, X-Wing has very successful tournament attendance.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have exclusive ships. They have alt art, acrylic tokens, and those things. Mm-hmm. So they reward players with different things that don't alter the competitive balance.
Right, they don't add anything unique to the gameplay itself.
Right. And I think, I don't know, I think that Attack Wing could go in that direction. And if they did, I think that my group would still show up and play. I don't know that that is universally true. I think that there's a lot of people that may still be in this game because they get their quote-unquote candy.
Right. Well, for some people, it's not about what the prize is. It's the fact that they get a prize. It's either the bragging rights or just the like, hey, I got something for what I did. It's an achievement token or whatever, right?
Right. And that's the thing that first got me hooked, super excited, was I went to a tournament and I placed, and it's like, hey, you get a Ferengi ship. I'm like, awesome. and by the way, just for showing up, you get an elite attack die. I'm like, that's really cool. And I guess here's the thing. The OP resources that you get just for showing up, those alone would be enough of a draw to keep tournament play going, I think.
Right.
If they still had something for winning. If it was alt art cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, for example, like a flagship resource. Everybody gets a flagship, but let's say you get, for winning, you get a card overlay, like a transparent piece of plastic or something, that has the added stats, like you get one for each of the 4, because you've got 4 different variations, that shows the plus ones beside where they would be on your ship card. So you can still use your actual resource, but you get this added thing that you slide in the sleeve over top of your ship card, and then it shows the added stats. Maybe even adds a little image of like your extra battle station action or scan or sensor echo or whatever. That would be kind of neat.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a throwback to the assimilation overlays from Star Trek CCG, but it's something that I've always loved, so it'd be kind of neat to put something similar here.
Right. And that's something that would be really awesome to have, but it doesn't change anything, and it's still, I think it would still be a drive for people to go out there and compete.
Yeah, like let's say you liked that concept and you liked the idea of that card, showing up to a later game having that, you'd feel kind of proud.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, hey, this is cool. Oh, look what that guy's got. That's neat. You know?
But here's the thing. I think that prize ships, prize packs now, they don't hurt the game. I think that the way that some cards have come out, and that some of the very powerful cards have been in the prize packs and ships, have hurt the game.
Right, availability being limited to prize packs alone.
But the fact that there are prizes have not hurt this game, because the draw is to get people to play in stores. And yeah, does it stink if your favorite ship comes out and it's a prize ship and now you don't have a local play group, so you have to resort to the marketplace or eBay to try to get a hold of it? Yeah, it does. But here's the thing, if there weren't super powerful cards, if the prize packs were better balanced, they wouldn't be nearly as expensive.
There'd still be the draw and the desire for them, but they wouldn't go up to inordinate prices. Like a ship that would be $15 at retail, maybe $25-$30 because it's a prize thing, just for rarity or whatever, wouldn't go to $100 or $75 or $150 or whatever, depending on what market you're trying to get it from.
Now, the grand prizes might still shoot up, but That's a different ball game.
That's more based on actual rarity than what's in it.
Yes.
Which is more appropriate, I think.
Yes.
And to talk about unique upgrades and things like that, shifting balance, doing what they did with the Sutherland and the Phoenix, where they actually released the high-energy sensor sweep in a retail pack, that's a great idea. Like, I'm all for the exclusivity of saying, hey, for the first 6 months or whatever, or until they release it at retail, me and the other winners are the only people that are going to be able to play this upgrade. Cool. Some extra bragging rights and functionality. But after, a limited time, it would be nice for everybody else to be able to partake in that fun without having to spend a fortune, because not everybody has it.
Right. Another rule that would address that is if every card that came out in a prize pack was unique.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't solve it. It would help. It would at least cut down the drive to have multiples.
Well, therein lies a design problem, though, and I've covered this before, and there are a number of cards that make no sense for them functionally to be unique. They would be smarter or wiser to make them as limit 1 per ship.
Great. So don't put those in the prize packs, put those in retail.
Well, even then you're kind of okay. Like, you could do that in the prize packs. It's where you can put like 2 or 3 or 4 of the same card on the same ship. That's when it really gets gross. That's what I will say scared whiz kids in a sense into making the mistake of making the tactical station unique. When making it 1 per ship should have been sufficient.
Yeah. Yes, but that's...
And of the same token, with your unique concept, if you wanted to do that and make the prize ship versions all unique, and then once you decide to release them at retail, you can make the appropriate ones either limit 1 per ship or non-unique. That would be okay.
Right, because then you just have a version that's unique in the prize ship, and then the retail versions can be different.
Yeah.
And that would all work perfectly fine. And you don't lose anything by doing that.
Right.
In fact, you'd probably have a better community, and you probably would have more people playing this game if that had been done.
Right, and along that, it's like a lot of the prize upgrades can be extremely good. Like some games, the rarer the card, the more rarity of the card does not mean it's a better ability. It just means it's harder to get. So they don't necessarily have to make the prize ship cards uber, just make them cool or interesting. Right?
Right. Have them do things. I think the Bellerophon was the perfect example of a pack that did interesting things that didn't break it. Luther Sloan.
Yeah.
Cool pack. Didn't break the game.
Yeah, like the warp geometry pylon things. I forget the exact name of it, but
the being able to like tweak your speed and that sort of thing for like an Intrepid class ship, it increased the intrigue or the interest of using the old Voyager or the new Bellerophon. You know, when you release cards that bring back connections to older ships or older things in the game, that also revitalizes the game. Even if it's just a simple card.
Right. And the nice thing that they're into now by doing these prize packs is that they can even do prize packs that don't have a ship in them. They can do a crew pack.
Well, like they did with the DS9 promo crew pack, like they did with the Q pack or the Temporal Cold War Grand Prize pack.
Yes.
There were no ships in those. They're just crew and other cards.
And I know people complained, a little unnecessarily, because, you know what? The Q pack is still something that I use 3 of those cards on a regular basis.
The Captain, the Admiral, and what else?
I use Q, I use Quinn, and I use Think Fast.
Interesting.
Because Think Fast is a quick 1-point filler talent.
right.
and I've actually used it for its ability. So, but I mean, it's a pack that had what, 6 cards or 5 cards? One of the two, I forget. But for me to use 3 of them, that's either 60% or 50%. That's a worthwhile grand prize.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing. The Temporal Cold War pack, not as useful, but I've been hearing a lot of rumblings about how to use some of those cards, and I'm not at liberty to discuss what I've been hearing about it. Because it involves worlds planning.
Right. Well, yeah, there were 6 cards in the Q pack, so there you go, 50%.
50%. But you know what? When's the last time that you saw a prize pack and got 50% use out of it?
Yeah.
They're out there. Don't get me wrong. They're out there. But they're few and far between.
Mm-hmm. There's usually 1, maybe 2 cards out of them that you'd use.
Yeah. And I know people grumbled, but I'm kind of going, guys, come on.
Yeah, and sometimes these are the same people that are complaining about prize ships being too powerful or whatever. It's like, yeah, but you're only using 1 card from them.
Yeah. and so here's my thing. Like, say the Klingon Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
Say we get our Romulan ship, and we get Sayla, and we get a Klingon ship, and we get a new Gowron or Martok or Worf or something. And then they want to do something else, and then they want to do something to give us the Duras sisters, but they don't want to give us a ship.
Yeah.
I'd be okay with getting the Duras family as a prize pack.
Right.
Not as the grand prize pack, but as a month prize pack.
Huh.
I think that could work. Or even, I may be talking crazy, but participation cards? Hey, you show up for month 1, here's Lursa. You show up for month 2, here's Baitor.
Month 3, Duras.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or what about things like Neelix and Kess or the Founders? You know, aspects of the crew and things that we've never seen in this game that, you know, like our Star Trek hearts are clamoring for. It's like, you gave us Voyager, but you missed out on some important things.
Yeah.
It's like, short of making Voyager an even bigger pack, and it was huge. It was the largest retail pack there was as far as volume of cards. There was, what, 20-some cards? 23 cards?
Including generics and it was
that was massive, and it was a thicker pack because it needed not only space for that plus the scenario boards for like the cube and the sphere stuff.
Yeah,
right.
It was huge. It was massive. It was gigantic. No, you couldn't. But yeah, getting participation cards of Neelix and Kess. I mean, some people would snark at that, but why?
Why not?
It's free stuff. They did it with Tholian Web and Arena. You got the red shirts. You got the red alert, full alert talents. It could be done again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, were those cards widely used? Are they widely used today? No.
I've yet to see them played in my venue. Short of just a casual night for fun just 'cause. Yeah. Never competitively.
But you know what? Here's the thing. If it exists in the game, someone will find a means of using it at some point in some OP because some scenario makes it useful.
Exactly.
All that being said, prize ships, if done well, can be beneficial for the game. I think that they have been beneficial for the game because they have given us things that wouldn't otherwise have made it into the game.
Yes.
And maybe some of them would have found a way. I think a lot of ships may have found that place. But some of them wouldn't have.
Right.
So where does the future go with prize ships? I don't know. If they keep doing prize packs, great. No qualms on my end. If they switch it to alt arts, would I grumble? Maybe a little bit. But am I still showing up to tournaments? Yeah. Because you know what? Alt arts would be cool.
Yes.
They would be really cool.
We already get teased at the concept of alt arts with like our Admiral cards. You get one image on one side and another on the other side. It's like the new Gowron Admiral card with the Drovana. It's like you've got Gowron and then you've got bug-eyed Robert O'Reilly Gowron on the other side. You know, it's like that's his trademark. It's like some people might think of it as like a defect or whatever. I think that's part of his character. That's what makes Gowron Gowron. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. You're exactly right. So a little bit of alt art could go a long way. Could help some people, could hurt some people.
What's a Klingon paint stick between friends?
Yeah. All right. On that note, let's hear what our contributors have to say about prize ships, because you've heard us talk for long enough.
Yeah, who wants to listen to us? Oh, wait, you guys do. Thank you.
Well, we hope. Yeah, thank you.
Hello, this is Big John in South Florida, playing for the Klingon Empire, the Klingon boarding party, and out of Da Vinci DreamWorks 2 in Denton Beach, Florida. And my opinion on prize ships being valuable to the game is a definite Coppola 2 thumbs up, golden batleth. Absolutely yes. I think the prize ships offer something great to the game and encourage the players to be a little bit more competitive. I would personally be very non-competitive if there wasn't something at stake in the prize category. It doesn't necessarily have to be as limited edition as the ships have been. The ones recently have been a lot more low-key, and I've enjoyed them a little bit better than the ones that were really elite and really had a driving force for people to collect multiples of. That's just my 2 cents. Have a great day, and Kapla.
Hey everyone, it's Natasha from Dude, It's Just a Game. While I don't think that they're currently doing everything they can do, I think prize ships do have the potential to be useful in the game of Star Trek Attack Wing, particularly in the element of getting people to sign up for and participate in tournament events, whether that be OPs or other sorts of tournaments. I think offering something that is unique and maybe even slightly better than what you get in a standard ship expansion would really improve that. I also think that WizKids has done some detriment to their prize ship program by deciding not to include models any longer. I think the models were really useful and helpful for a lot of people, and for people who don't have a large collection, it may be detrimental to them. It may actually make them decide not to participate in an event because the prize may just not be worth the effort. However, like I said, I do think that there's potential for it to be a good thing, and I do really enjoy some of the cards that come out of them. So that's it for this week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hello, this is Stephen Stott with Ready to Play Gaming down in Columbia, South Carolina. Today's question, very controversial. Are prize ships beneficial to the game? Well, short answer, yes, they are. When I started playing, maybe about 2 or 3 months into when WizKids first put out Star Trek Attack Wing, I jumped into the Dominion War scenario and got right into playing. One of the neat things I found out immediately was that if you win an OP, you get a prize ship for that game. So that was neat. It was a way of getting special ships that were out there that other people didn't get in retail. Now, of course, I know the controversy there. People want the prize ships, so they want to get them in retail. And there's other ways, of course, of looking and dealing with things like that. And then, of course, there's the almighty eBay, where you can do the Ferengi thing and spend money to get exactly what you want, everything you want in the world. So there is that. Not necessarily that I'm into that or agree with that. I normally aren't that type. I normally try to get the ships by winning them in the OPs. And we're blessed down here in Columbia, South Carolina to have a great setup where we have multiple OPs that we play, and the core group that plays normally gets a win and is able to get a ship, or they are able to get it through the red shirt method or different methods. But the bottom line up front is I do think that prize ships are beneficial to the game. It's a great incentive. I'm not a big gamer other than Star Trek Attack Wing, so I'm not really familiar with all the other different games like Magic and so forth, and how they do their prizes and stuff. I understand it's very competitive. But for me, who loves the game of Star Trek, I love getting ships. I love that type of play, and I love that incentive. The only thing I would add to all this, and forgive me for the lengthy discussion on it, but the only thing I would add to this is for WizKids, and they're doing better at this, by the way, is ensuring that the prize ships match up with the OP scenario that they're presenting when it's applicable. For example, we just did Doomsday, and in the Doomsday scenario, the Constellation, which was the premier ship in the episode, the original series episode, was the prize ship. I think for us, particularly for us Trekkers, that becomes neat. With the with the movie scenario coming up, the grand prize is the Enterprise A. So it's just not a retail ship, but it is a prize ship, and I think that gives a lot of incentive for those of us that are hardcore trekkers to say, hey, I really want that ship and I want it added to my collection. So we play the OPs, and it's going to make for some really interesting fleet builds to try to amass those points to win the grand prize. Anyway, I know this was a long segment, but good question. This is Steven Stott with Ready to Play Gaming down in Columbia, South Carolina. Hoping all your dice rolls are hits and evades, except for my guys down in Columbia, South Carolina. I need all misses so I can win that OP. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.
Hi, this is Dave Griffin. I would say no for the following reasons. It's always good to get a new ship, and some of the prize ships are quite good and have very useful cards. But to put those cards in that ship in a prize ship where some people won't have access to it, won't be able to win it, or won't be able to afford to buy it on eBay is, I think, a mistake. It would be better to put those cards and those ships in retail packages where everybody can buy them, and not in the prize ships. For the prizes, it would be better if they were something that would give you bragging rights, like X-Wing's alternate art cards or Armada's alternate art cards. Something that would allow you to show that you've done well in the OPs, something you could be proud of, but not something that would give you an advantage in later games that you played. Certain ships like the Chitang early in the game really gave an advantage to players who had won them. Barrage of Fire and the Chitang itself and Defense Condition 1 were all extremely useful in winning further OPs. And to me, there's no reason to give the winners a better chance to win in the future. They can already do that for themselves. Thanks. And I'll see you next week.
Greetings, Warp Core Breach listeners. This is Bane of Borg with episode 33. Are prize ships beneficial for the game? Well, I say yes, they are. The reason being, as a collector, it gives me motivation to play in OPs and try to win OPs, which makes me think more about my fleet builds and fleet types and that sort of thing. As a player, it gives me motivation because I have access to new crew, new tech, new weapons, upgrades, that sort of thing. And also, finally, I think prize ships helps with the variety of fleets. Let's say you get a Bajoran prize ship or a Federation prize ship or a Klingon prize ship. It's just one more ship and set of upgrades and crew that if you're collecting a fleet of Klingon or whatever, it gives you a little bit of variety. You just don't have what you can buy on retail. So I think it's good for the game as a whole. I know in the tournament setting it's good, and even in non-tournament, I think having prize ships available, if only in a secondary market or for trading, helps the game. So that's my contribution to episode 33. This is Bane of Borg signing off. Thank you.
Hello everyone, it's Matt here, aka Omicron, bringing you greetings from sunny Guelph, Ontario, Canada. The issue of the benefit of prize ships has long been debated. I feel that prize ships add an essential draw to the game for those who want to play in a competitive environment. Sure, winning and having bragging rights is great, but in the end, there's something about holding a prize ship, or more recently a prize pack, in your hands that's just fantastic. If there were no prize ships, I don't think the game would be as actively played today as it is. Now, I know what you're thinking. Matt, there are no stores in my area that run OP events. Do I really have to go to eBay if I want to get a special prize ship? Well, I have an idea about that. I actually got my inspiration, believe it or not, from WizKids. Call it the mirror universe of resource retirement. I think after 1 year, a WizKid should release each prize ship for retail sale. Those that won the ship initially in an OP event will get 1 year in which they could thoroughly enjoy their ship. After that year, the rest of the community would have the opportunity to purchase a ship and add it to their fleet. Overall, I think prize ships are a good thing. They get people interested in the game, and they help encourage creativity as people construct builds to try and win the elusive prize ships. They also provide an opportunity for generosity. At a recent OP event, we had a new player. One of our long-standing players, he had won a couple of extra prize ships. What did this player do? He gave his winning prize ship to the new player. Where else would you see that but in Star Trek? That's another reason why I think prize ships are great. They help promote the spirit of Star Trek, but also promote the spirit of being competitive. Thanks. Have a good day, guys. Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody. New contributor Matt here, answering this week's question, are prize ships good for the game? I definitely think so. I know some people feel like you're at a disadvantage if you weren't in an early OP and you couldn't win a big prize ship. But I think at this point, there's so many good ships in the game, easily available at retail or even prize ships. Generally, you could find pretty cheap through secondhand avenues or trading through the group on Facebook or in your local community. I don't think any of the prize ships are too powerful, but they're fun to have. They draw people out to events, and they give a little incentive for coming up with fun new builds. So I think they're a good thing.
Hi everyone, Not Picard here. Do I think prize ships are beneficial to the game? Now, I don't think there's an easy yes-no answer to this question. I think the answer is yes, in as much as having more cards and more abilities is brilliant. Having people willing to play hard to get a new ship that other people don't have as well is brilliant. The problem is, as the game goes on and as the early prize ships become more and more difficult to get hold of, it kind of acts as a way of dissuading new players. So from that point of view, I kind of like what was done with Thalia 1 and the Gornaris, where they were semi-re-releases of previous prize ships. I like the idea that people can get their hands on the prize ships if they're a good player early. I don't like the idea of people who didn't win the prize ship never being able to get hold of it. I have all of the prize ships. I've only had to buy one of them, but I got the feeling that if I didn't buy that one, it would have been to my detriment as a player, because it would have robbed me of certain cards that otherwise I would have liked to have had. So I like prize ships. I'm glad that they had prize ships and prize packs in the game. I wish that they would become available after a year or 6 months or a certain amount of time to everyone, so that even though you did get an advantage to winning them, it wasn't an advantage that would last forever. So that's my view on it. I'm sorry it's not a clear yes-no answer, but I'm not able to give clear yes-no answers because I'm not Picard.
Okay, final thoughts. If they were to do a scenario for the motion picture, and they're probably not at this point, but if they were, what would it look like?
Vija.
So, yeah, you get V'ger. You have a couple of means of approaching it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got the start of it with the Klingons.
Yeah.
And that would be an awesome way to do it. Of course, that's probably a race against time with V'ger picking ships off. Now, you'd probably do it in some way just rolling raw dice and doing damage.
Mm-hmm.
I probably wouldn't make it as devastating as it actually was in the movie.
You could almost play it like that collective OP where you were semi-cooperatively fighting against the Borg, where you just kind of had to be the one to do the most damage because you couldn't actually kill it. And then like maybe have that for, you get a token each round for surviving, and you either had to deal a certain amount of damage or perhaps engage V'ger and try to communicate with it. Maybe you do some other rolls to try to call it off, so to speak, so you could have two different tacks. You get awarded points based on, which tactic you're going for and how successful you were.
See, that's the perspective I'd like to take. I want a mission where we change the rules up entirely. We go something like one ship, no combat at all. Like, you can't even fire at your opponent. And it's all about interacting with V'ger, making like checks against it, progressing through the ship, and ultimately trying to communicate with it, learn more about it, and you get rewarded for how far you can get in that process.
Right.
Now, maybe that doesn't make for the greatest of OPs. And perhaps that's why we didn't see it as an OP.
Yeah, because the game is geared for ship combat, basically.
Is.
So a lot of the cards and upgrades and things are geared for that light. But, if you had something that you could kind of mirror some of those abilities into similar skills or something that you can allow for either re-rolls or things that, attributes that you need to overcome each stage, and then if you have a certain type of crew or a certain type of tech or whatever, you get bonuses to your rolls, then you can overcome these things. But what I'd kind of like is not so much just simply non-combat scenarios or OPs, but viable alternate victory conditions. So each OP doesn't just have one victory condition that's essentially destroy your opponent and, oh, by the way, you can get extra points by doing this. It's like, you can win by doing this, you can win by doing this, and maybe you can win by doing this. So that not everybody who comes in to play a tournament is going to be going for the exact same goal, right?
So maybe in the idea of winning in different ways, you still have ship combat, but you have it at some kind of limited stats.
Mm-hmm.
So you have attack dice be less effective because you're inside of V'ger.
Right.
So that's messing with your systems.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a legitimate thing. I can justify that from a scenario perspective.
Or where you have different stages to a scenario. It's like you play the first part of it where you're engaging your opponent, and once you do a certain amount of damage, or once the first ship is destroyed, or a certain criteria is met, then at that point, V'ger shows up, sucks you up, and then you have to do something else. So it's like a forced multi-chapter thing. And and it be set up with criteria such that you're not going to be spending the first 40 minutes of the game just getting through the first part of like combat. Like, you can do it in the first 10 minutes or 15 or 20, depending how you're playing. So it's not something that you got to slog through just to understand it.
I suppose.
Yeah.
Look, these are just our initial thoughts on this. We're not trying to actually design the scenario. Call this brainstorming.
Yeah.
This is what Nick and I came up with basically on the fly about 5 minutes before we started recording it. We said, hey, why don't we do this for our final thoughts?
Yeah.
That's kind of what happens with the final thoughts segment. It's like, oh yeah, we need final thoughts. You got anything? No. You got anything? No. So we toss something out. So that's kind of our initial thoughts. And yes, it's completely disjointed and it's random and it's out there.
That's where ideas start.
Yeah,
that's where things begin.
Maybe there's something out there that inspires you to build your own scenario.
Yeah.
And if so, let us know. Talk to us. We'll develop it further with you. Like, we'll sit down, have a group message and build it. Message one of us. We'll start it up. Email us.
Yeah.
We're happy to talk.
I've already designed a campaign concept, so I've got a few ideas floating around. So if you've got something to contribute, David will have something to contribute. We'll hash things out, throw things around, and hey, engage.
All right. But I think that's going to wrap things up for this episode. We're going to call it a day. And hopefully next week we'll have more to say about stuff.
Stuff. I like stuff. You got stuff? I got lots of stuff. You'll like my stuff. You got cool stuff? Stuff is cool. So, for our upcoming Wave 24 review, we're thinking that it might be an idea to wait until we actually see what the re-release, repaint, whatever of the USS Enterprise is going to be, because we know what the cards are. They've been released before. Reviewing that isn't really going to give you, our listeners, anything new to think or talk about. So once we know exactly what the new model is going to look like, it's going to be translucent. It's going to be just a silver paint like the Intrepid. We don't know. But once we get something solid where we know for sure what it's going to be, that's when we want to report back to you.
So if that's before the week of May 4th, great. If that's after May 4th, well, so be
Warp
it.
core breach in 10.
Either way, may the 4th be with you.
8.
And also with you.
6. 5.
So until
4,
next time.
This is Nick.
3.
And this is David.
2.
Ejecting the core.
Warp core ejected.
Warp Core Breach is produced by Nick Norris and David Montgomery, with additional content from our contributors. Our computer is voiced by Corinne Donnelly.
Warp Core Breach is not endorsed, sponsored, or affiliated with CBS Studios Incorporated or the Star Trek franchise. All Star Trek trademarks and logos are owned by CBS Studios Incorporated.
All sound files are used under Creative Commons 3.0 by attribution. For specifics, please visit our Facebook page by searching Warp Core Breach Podcast. If you want to contribute to the show, let us know on the Facebook page, or you can email us at warpcorebreachpodcast@gmail.com.
Borg! Definitely ain't Swedish.